Good deal.
We all ready? All right, I'd like to call the Town of Cedar Lake Unsafe Building Department work session for August 5th, 2024 to order at 8:02 a.m. Can I get a roll call, please, Cheryl?
Mr. Gatto?
Here.
Mr. Beal?
Here.
Mr. Teal?
Here.
Ms. Sensauer? Present. Mr. Deutmeyer?
Here.
Ms. Hynuk is present.
Thank you. All right, so basically, I believe the purpose of this is so we can figure out how we wanted to generate this letter for some people, one of the items at least, for instead of just having Tony doing a report and then making everyone appear, if this is something that can be a simple repair, they come in, get a permit, get it fixed, and then they never have to be on our agenda.
Right.
So Tony did mention that just a little bit ago that we don't have any type of code or anything that, you said Indiana had it?
There's like an international property maintenance code or something like that Indiana did not adopt. So some states have that, and they can use that as their guideline for, hey, you know, you're missing 5 pieces of siding off your house, you have been for 3 years, you know, to get it fixed. We don't have anything like that. Indiana doesn't, so I suppose it's up to the individual municipalities to create something if that's what they want to do.
So right now, all we have to go off of is our, well, what? I mean,
We go straight to unsafe, which is like, it's pretty extreme, sir.
which is
for a lot of the stuff.
not like you've had a tarp on your roof for 3 years. That's not unsafe. So
Right,
those-
it's more of a, it's more to take care of the stuff that's an eyesore and a nuisance that doesn't necessarily, like, I mean, the ones that need to be demoed, that is what it is. But, I mean, the ones that people just maybe, it's out of sight, out of mind for them, they live 3 states away, and hey, let's do something with this, and you don't have to drag them through the whole unsafe thing, which obviously we've seen with some of these goes on for 1.5 years, so.
So when we did the ordinance, or updated the ordinance, the original ordinance was already there, so it was just an update, and that took a long time. So now my fear is that we're like recreating the wheel if we have to do what Tony's saying.
I don't know what,
Yeah, but I don't think we have to, so Ryan, we wouldn't really have to do any type of ordinance, right? Just as far as issuing letters out for, like, notices, kind of like what we did on that 142nd with the garage that was falling down.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that one last time. That one's a little bit different because the board had declared that one to be an emergency.
Correct.
Which is kind of what prompted the individual to get working on it, because we said that if you don't get it knocked down in whatever, 10 or 14 days, then we're going to go ahead and do it. So that's slightly different. You still need to base it off of something, whether that be potential building code violations, the easy fallback, which is somewhat embedded in the unsafe building code is the nuisance code. You know, unsightly, you know, it's fairly generic and vague that you could probably use that to sort of spur some sort of action from folks. You know, Cedar Lake does have a nuisance provision in its own code. The Indiana code has specific nuisance provisions as well that could be utilized if a property were to meet that standard.
Are you familiar with any of those, Tony?
no.
What does one of those read like?
What's that?
A nuisance code. I mean, it seems very vague.
It is. I mean, it's kind of a squishy term. It's defined, Cedar Lake has a specific provision. I think it's in the 90s. Cheryl, do you have the ability to pull that out?
Yeah, it's 90 or 91, something in there, as I remember.
And what
I'll
does
see if
that
I
say?
can find the language.
I guess my question is, do we need something more, or does that cover us as a town where we're okay legally?
You could say you're just out of compliance with such and such, ordinance, basically, is, I mean, if you could use that language, that would, you know.
And it kind of goes back to what we had talked about earlier in the year, which was using the nuisance provisions to get people to repair houses before they ever became unsafe.
Do you feel like that covers us legally, that we're okay with that?
Should. Unless there's something that's really sort of on the fence that we could talk to Tony about, but generally speaking.
I mean, I feel like the things that you're talking about, they're big, like a tarp on a roof for 4 years.
Right.
Or boarded up windows for
Right.
years.
Well, or not boarded up windows where it's a haven for,
Animals.
animals, breeding ground for, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so who's going to police that?
As far as bring it to attention?
Yeah,
I would prefer not to. I would prefer it comes from you guys or from council or something, because I don't want to be accused of, singling out this or that or whatever. I would prefer that it comes via email or text from someone above me. Hey, can you go check this out? Does it meet our
nuisance.
criteria for nuisance?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Tony on that one. That way, there is no question, it would come from the board, say, hey, let's issue this, letter so that they don't have to appear. Because I can definitely see that happening.
Right.
Like, almost like a picking and choosing. I've heard that term
Right.
every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I get emails and texts and calls. I know Jeff, you have as well, and I'm sure you do too.
Yes.
And some of them are just irritated neighbors because we're in Cedar Lake, we all live next to homes that we wish weren't there, that are abandoned and untaken care of, but there's a difference between that and unsafe.
That it wouldn't be just, building department, whether it be Tony or any other of the inspectors, just freely going and issuing these letters. It would have to come with some direction.
Right.
You'd feel more comfortable with that, right?
Yeah.
So in your head, what does that look like? They get like a warning, so to speak.
Basically, is what it would be. Come in, talk to the building department about what the concern is, whether it is, busted windows, people, animals crawling in the basement, stuff like that.
Right.
On how they can take care of the situation before Tony has to go and do a full report and involve everybody on it.
So a warning, and then with, like, how many days to come in and how many days to comply?
Well, we have, and this is a building department thing, someone does work with no permit, and we have to red tag it. We give them, from the day we issue the tag, we give them 10 days to respond. If they don't, we issue a second notice, and 10 days later, after the second notice, if they don't respond, then they get a letter sent out with I believe it's a $50 fine, and they have 30 days to secure a permit by that point, or daily fines can begin to accrue, and at that point, I think it gets handed off to Ryan's office.
Yeah, probably.
So that could almost work the same way then, right, Ryan? Especially with this new ordinance, with this fee schedule and stuff? You can kind of go hand in hand with the building department that way, or?
Yeah, that's kind of what we talked about earlier in the year. I'm just trying to see what the fine schedule is for nuisances themselves.
I'd like the idea of keeping it the same for the sake of the building department, so we're not complicating timelines. and
Absolutely.
timeframes.
That
So-
would simplify it for sure.
We get a call or a text, and we say, hey, Tony, I need you to check this out. You check it out, and you say, it's worth sending a letter.
Sure.
They get sent a letter, they have 10 days to respond. If they don't, send another letter with a $50 fine and another 10 days to respond.
Well, it would be a letter 10 days, and the second letter 10 days, and if there's no response, then we send, with us, it's different because it's a tag on site. So the procedure's slightly different, but if it were 10 days, your second notice 10 days, no response after those 20 days, then they get the letter with a fine.
Okay.
That's the way we,
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so your fee schedule there, first offense is 50, no less than 50. Second offense is no less than 100, third offense and subsequent is no less than 200.
offense meaning they don't respond, or?
I mean, technically under the ordinance, every day is a new offense.
Okay.
But, I mean, I think the goal here is to clean up versus to just hammer them with fines.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say that it's after your waiting periods, whatever you determine them to be, 10 days, 14
And-
days.
Yeah.
Can I ask for a point of clarification? He's talking about something as simple and as a building permit, or it doesn't mean that, if we have a dilapidated building that has, certainly looks like it may have the propensity to fall in on itself at any given time, where it's now more of a issue of safety,
Mm-hmm.
do you think we need to move have a little bit more of a expedited plan or schedule to then get out and start hitting these people in their back pocket. Because that's the only way you're ever going to get anybody to move. Or at least that's what I've seen in my 6 months here.
And I've said in the past, you know, with some of the items that have been on the agenda for 2 years, just because somebody rakes a pile of leaves and drags some sticks to the curb in 30 days, that was, you know, in my eyes, wasn't progress. And I know you've seen it way more, you know. And I stated then that if some of these people would have just gotten a fine, it would have kind of lit a fire under them to actually accomplish something. But I mean, by Tony going out there, whoever gets a notice and instructs Tony to go out there, it could be worse than what it's, you know, being portrayed, and Tony could say, hey, this really, you know, is more of a severe issue than what it was thought to be or something, or not. And I think the main thing is for the ones that are not, not dragging it out for so long. Is that your thoughts?
Yeah, that was my thought too.
I got a question. Is this letter going to the address, or is it going to the homeowner? Because someone might be renting. Is that something we're gonna have to investigate too?
So the way they're normally sent, at least as the way Ashley previously did it, and I talked to Cheryl about this, is what we generally look for is we always send to the address of the property. But also we will look to see either on the GIS, like the auditor's records, to see where the tax bills are being sent to. If that's the same, then what Cheryl will do is look at the billing records for the town, specifically for water, to see if the water bill is going to somewhere else. So we kind of look at 3 different places to see if there's alternative addresses where you might sort of be able to find the owner. But normally, if they want their tax bill sent to that property address, they're probably going to receive their mail there.
And Doug, that includes like the sewer utility billing also? Okay. Doug, while there's a little pause here, do you know of a municipality that may have a cookie cutter, you know, generic letter that's already drafted out there that we could tweak to our needs?
I don't know, like the others that we work with, I don't think they really use this. The only other one that is really active with code enforcement has a dedicated code enforcer that's usually out there capturing people, unlicensed contractors, sending letters out, because they run into a lot of issues with pools and other structures, decks that people don't maintain in the backyard, where he just captures them and talks to them right away. I don't know if he sends them anything.
Okay.
There's not really another municipality like ours, where we're dealing with the amount of,
Gary.
No, but I mean,
Gary, yeah.
Gary's not sending letters out.
That's my point,
Urban
yeah.
areas,
But I can't imagine that's a tough thing to write up, right?
No, it should be fairly standard form, because probably what you're going to do, there's 2 provisions in the town's code for nuisances. Number 1, dwellings that are unfit for human habitation, which probably, if it's that extreme, is probably getting us into the unsafe building code. Right. 2 is dangerous buildings adjoining streets, which they're all probably going to be adjoining streets.
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
It's defined as any building, house, or structure so out of repair and dilapidated that it will, if the condition is allowed to continue, endanger the life, limb, or property of, or cause hurt, damage, or injury to persons or property using or being upon the streets or public way of the town adjoining the premises, by reason of the collapse of the building, house, structure, or falling parts thereof, or of objects therefrom. There's also a dilapidated buildings provision. Any building, house, or structure that is so out of repair and dilapidated that it constitutes a fire hazard, liable to catch on fire or communicate fire, or which due to the lack of adequate maintenance or neglect endangers the public health, safety, or welfare, or material interferes with the peaceful enjoyment of owners or occupants of adjacent property.
Now, that one alone.
That's unsafe too.
To me, yeah, but that one alone, if there's a busted window,
Yeah.
you know, an animal are coming in, it can be just off of that provision alone to issue a letter to, hey, fix the window.
Yeah, all those for sure, but the unfit and then the danger, the street thing.
Yes.
I think those two are good for the purpose of just a warning letter.
Yes, yes.
I mean, if you're talking about a generic letter, you could generically reference all three of them,
Yeah.
right? It's just, hey, this is an ordinance, or a nuisance, pursuant to, the Cedar Lake Town Code was in 93.03.
And we wouldn't have to get into specifics into this letter, it would be just to get their attention to come in, and to say what, with the building department and what the correction would be. Hey, your deck is, pulled away from the house, somebody could hurt themselves, the windows busted going into a crawl, raccoons are living under it, kind of thing.
Certainly an initial letter, I think could be more generic.
An attention getter, come in and talk with the building department.
If you get no reaction, then you might want to be more specific in a secondary letter, so they can't claim, well, we didn't understand this, we didn't know exactly what the issue was, blah, blah, blah.
All right, so hypothetically speaking, we send them the warning, we send the second letter, they get the first initial fine of $50. They don't answer, they don't come in, they don't do anything. They get a fine of $50. Then what? Where are we going from there?
And it doesn't have to be 50, it's no less than 50. You can set that amount at 300, 500 if you want to.
So they get their first fine of whatever,
Yeah.
and still nothing.
You can issue a second fine, you can issue a third fine.
Every day there's a fine? I mean,
Technically.
where are we going with it?
Yeah, I mean, under the ordinance, every day is a new violation. We have a case now in another municipality that when we actually calculate out what the theoretical fines could be, it's over $250,000. Now, I don't think a judge in this county is going to award us $250,000.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to ask for.
And the intention isn't to do it just to collect money, it's to get people's attention. If I got a fine in my mail on something, I'm gonna come and, take care of the situation so I don't have to pay. But,
Well, not everyone's like you, though.
Yeah, but-
You blow it off and, they don't respond.
So this is all gonna be done through the building department with a nice structured way to send the warning and the additional letters and the fines. We just have to figure out, what do we need to figure out then? What that fine is,
well,
what it continues to be?
in what extent, to me, it would be then, at what extent then does it not become more of a fine, then it just becomes, okay, now they're on unsafe. To me, that's, the whole thing is to avoid them from being on unsafe, to get their attention, correct whatever situation is, in violation on the property. But like Ryan said, $250,000 fine. I would just assume after so many, okay, now the full report, now they need to start coming to meetings.
So in that first letter though, then we have to state that our intention is to keep you off of the unsafe.
Well, I think the way you would open it is, dear property owner, your property's been identified as a potentially unsafe structure in the town of Cedar Lake, due to violations of whatever, 93.03, in order to prevent this matter from becoming an active item on the unsafe agenda, please contact the building department within whatever, 10 days, 14 days to make these corrections, and to avoid, additional fines, something like that.
Yeah.
So you're at least notifying them.
Yeah, is that something we would instruct you then to draft for us, or is
We could have
that?
like a form letter, yeah. You'd have to plug and play like addresses and
Yeah.
keep the reference the same unless for some reason there was something other than the nuisance ordinance, but we would just reference back to that.
And then the second one would say you have 10 days.
Yeah, this is your second notice, these violations, failure to correct them will result in, an X dollar fine that will be imposed on whatever day. Please be advised that, pursuant to the town's ordinance, every day is a new violation.
See, he just drafted a letter right there, it's perfect.
Yeah.
2 of them. Okay, and then,
It might be a little more wordy than
Yeah.
that.
And then certified, go out certified mail?
Yeah, I would send them certified and regular like we always do.
Okay.
So the next thing you need to consider is, when you give if you give them the 30 days, to come in and secure a permit, that permit's then good for a year.
No, it's not though, I don't think.
Then they can renew it for an additional year for half the cost. So that's something that you're needed to take into consideration too, because then these things, 2 years down the road, you still have the same thing, if we go by
Regular.
the typical.
And I can't see us, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, would that be a problem then if we deviated from normal building department procedure on a permit? I understand, yes, we can issue a permit for so many days, but if they came in for the permit, like Tony said, and get the year, how can we say, no, it can only be 6 months or
Yeah, it's
3 months?
trickier because they're not within the jurisdiction of this board yet.
Yeah,
So you guys trying to impose timing restrictions that one is probably a little more suspect.
yeah, so Tony did mention that to me when we were talking on the phone, and I understand it, but I would assume if they come in, they actually want to correct the condition, you know?
But I believe there is also something, there's wording in the ordinance that if a permit is obtained and no substantial work takes place within 90 days or something like that, the permit can be revoked. So
Oh,
at that point, you revoke the permit and then they get the whole
I like
unsafe
that.
treatment.
Yeah.
so these people stay on, well, they all should, but these people especially will stay on that radar of the 90 days. Nothing's happened, they haven't called
They
for.
should probably be made known of that as well, that this doesn't give you the 12-month freebie to do nothing, if no substantial work takes place within, I believe it's 90 days, I'd have to look to be sure.
I'll see if I can find it real quick.
Okay.
I mean, I thought that should go out with every building permit.
Well, some cases it should, yeah.
I mean, just like the CYA though, that'd be like a nice, letter, hey, you got 90 days to start doing something.
Right.
And then once they do nothing in that 90-day period, if they want to come back in and get a building permit, can we escalate the fine schedule?
Well, no, this is if they already have the permit and don't do any work.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but if they were given that 90-day period, and then they allow that to elapse, and now all of a sudden, after the encouragement or the bump of another letter, that now they're thinking, well, okay, well, now I have time to do something.
I think that means that they go on the unsafe list.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my
Would
thought.
would that be the automatic next step?
I would think.
I would think, yeah, I mean, of course, if there's a hardship or a death and things, I mean, if there's a genuine story, for sure, but if they just got the, no, I like that, if they just got the permit to kind of keep us quiet for the
Yeah.
year, or 90 days and didn't do anything, that's pretty telling of what the future's gonna, I mean, we see that all the time. If they're not making moves quick, then they're not gonna make moves.
Yeah.
No, I like that, so the 90 days, and then,
Don't quote me on the 90-day thing, I believe it's in there. And I know I've looked it up before for something that I figured was going to go nowhere, and it didn't go anywhere. So that was something that, we were looking to revoke the permit.
and what did you do then? Did you revoke it?
At that point, it basically just sat, we were busy enough that nothing happened with it, and it's still an ongoing issue. But it was a letter that just a sticky note that I put on my wall, hey, we're gonna revoke this,
Yeah.
there's nothing on that.
I think that'd be great for just a letter to go out with every permit, though. No?
I don't know.
No,
A lot of them,
with
a lot of
every,
them do what they're supposed to do, there's very
But
few
just saying
that
if you
don't.
don't, though, it's not,
would it,
it's not like a.
so by every permit, are you saying every permit that we're discussing with this situation?
No, I mean, literally every permit.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. That's okay.
And that's way out of my jurisdiction of
Okay.
authority, not that I have any period, but.
Yeah.
No, for ours though, for sure, I think it should, because we've seen too many people that just don't do anything.
Right.
So then would that have to be instruction to you then to draft that up then, Ryan? I think it'd be more professional coming from your office, or is it not necessary, or is it?
For which one?
For the first, the initial letter.
Yeah, the 2 letters?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just making notes on.
Okay.
But again, that's the type of thing that needs to be sent from the town. Like
Yeah.
we'll obviously get you the forms and stuff like that, but that would just come from the building department on town letterhead, send it out and go from there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's something you wanna just immediately turn over to the lawyers, like, that's just something that you guys can process.
Yeah.
So what's the, Ryan, you mentioned the fine schedule, is that something we have to figure out still?
It's a minimum of 50, minimum of 100, minimum of 200. I mean, for subsequent offenses, we're probably not getting to the $200 realm, but.
Personally, I would say the first is 50, and then after that, we're gonna know if they're gonna show up or not, and then they'll be on, you know, what's your
So
thoughts?
are we gonna continue with the fines? So if they don't answer and they start with that first fine, and then we're like, all right, now you're plopped over to the unsafe board, are those fines gonna continue? Or now they just have a $50 fine?
I would say, I don't see why they shouldn't continue.
I agree with you.
That's how it's structured for the other stuff, right, isn't it? Or supposed to be for any other fines that are,
Yeah, after 30 days, then fines can accrue daily, which I think if I remember right, Ashley, dealing with a particular one, yeah, they stacked up for a month, I think, and then she sent a subsequent letter, and we're still dealing with that one. So, yeah, it's something that can be done, but, I mean, the enforcement of it has to come from.
That was gonna be the next question is.
We have
what
to
if-
enforce it.
What if they say, you know, they get the letter that says you're fined $50?
Right.
Then how do we enforce the $50?
Right.
Is that something that you guys would then turn over to, the police department or the code enforcement to file into the town court, and it just ends up on our monthly docket? Because usually, like, those cases would ultimately result as ordinance violations in town court. Get them all the time, you know, speeding tickets, unsafe vehicle operation, a lot of abandoned vehicles, stuff like that. But those all have to be filed into the county system, and I know obviously the police department does it regularly. I don't know who would be filing that, and then the follow-up to that is who then acts as the witness when and if somebody comes in and contests it. Because I get to sit there at 4:30 every other Tuesday and go through a whole pile of folks that don't think their cars were abandoned or whatever. And somebody would be having the pleasure of joining me during one of those proceedings or multiple of those proceedings if people are contesting them. But that's the only way to get entered as a judgment, is kind of the end result, right? If you just say it's $50 and then they say, you know, go pound sand,
Yeah, appeal it.
and they don't pay it, then the next step is to enforce it, which is by filing the case.
Or that's when they end up on the unsafe list, because it's not worth all that.
That could be.
yeah, to me, there's a fine line between it isn't worth all of that, you know?
Right.
But the question is the ones that you're talking about, Tony, right? A few pieces of siding or whatever, like, is that hypothetical, theoretical house, is that going to qualify as an unsafe property that this board would have jurisdiction on?
Right, which would, I guess, ultimately then be up to you guys to decide what would get put on your agenda. But then the stuff that, you know, the people are stubborn and they don't do anything and it's not enough to go on the agenda, then I guess it just sits there and continues to be what it is.
I mean, we have plenty of those cases where people are not responsive.
Right.
Plenty of cases where people are, but there's some, I mean, I think there's one now that's set for demolition where, you know, both owners are dead and they died like a decade ago. And lived in Florida, was the last known address. You have the Hobart Street property where, you know, it was stuck in litigation and then they did nothing with it.
Yep.
Right, so that's kind of the, I guess that's gonna be the give and the take of it is, you know, there'll be some that'll respond and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you know, we live out in wherever, Boo-Foo land, and didn't realize that. And there'll be others that just aren't gonna do anything regardless.
Right.
I don't want to change the subject, but the list that you have of the 16 or whatever, Tony, that you had and then COVID happened, was it 16?
Oh,
You mean the page and a half one?
Yeah.
That still hasn't been, yeah.
That list?
That list.
This, like, my thought is that nothing's happened with that unsafe list of ours in as long as I can remember. Colleen added some, like, towards, I don't know, September, October, of-
Yeah, 5, yeah.
which were all in South Shore. I don't know how those got on the list either. I had nothing to do with those. So I think maybe did she just pick those, or how did that work?
It was her, Ashley, I don't remember if Colleen had asked, if some could be added, and then Ashley was the one who decided ultimately what got added, but I believe it was by direction of the board, so.
Well, it wasn't the board, because I had nothing to do with it. So if
Okay.
anything, it was Colleen.
That could be, yeah.
But,
It was probably just, hey, you know, the agenda's getting a little light, add some, and then they were arbitrarily selected.
Well, you know, it hasn't been in a while, so.
so my question is, those, a page and a half that you have,
Mhm.
do you feel like this letter would be a great thing to send out to,
Be a good start at least, I mean, the ones that are vacant and the people have done nothing with them for years, those are ones that still might end up in this room, but, the ones, where it's, hey, your garage is falling in, let's just, why don't you take care of it? Stuff like that, I would think people would, okay, I've been meaning to do that, and now you've got my attention, okay, I'll tell you.
If it is, I mean, it is literally a page and a half.
how, like,
double
what kind of
spaced.
font are we talking?
It's double
Like
spaced.
10 to 15, or
Double
what?
spaced,
Double
but,
spaced.
so we'll just call it one page, but are we gonna want, Tony, are we gonna wanna have all of these issued at the same time, or are we
No.
gonna kinda wanna pay?
No.
Cause I'm thinking that if all of them said, now we got 30 items,
Yeah.
so to speak, on an agenda, when we, kinda test the waters with first couple and,
Right, but the building department will have to be aware of, someone comes to the window and says, hey, I got this letter, and the girls are gonna say, well, I have no idea what this is about.
yeah.
So when kinda like when we do the stop work orders, we send an email with the address in the subject line, that way there's, we can keep track of it easily that way, with pictures, and when someone comes in, hey, I got this red tag for no stop there, for work with no permit, then Christina, Nicole, or Michelle can reference it by the address in the email, see the pictures, oh, okay, this is what's going on there. So, kind of would need to be sort of the same thing, so that when this person does come in, if Eddie or I are out, doing inspections, that they can reference this. And
Yeah.
they may still need to call us, or they may still need to, hey, the inspector will call you when he gets back in to clarify what this permit needs to be for.
Yeah, and I agree, is keeping it as uniform as possible with the
Right.
current, way you guys handle things. I mean, that way it's not, complicating things like you
Working
said.
for
Yeah.
the most part.
With
Seems to
it,
be working for the most part.
Yeah.
Obviously, the people that don't respond, they blow us off, whatever, but I'd say it's a pretty high percentage that actually do respond and either didn't know they needed a permit or whatever.
correct. Okay.
So, the list, do you think that, are you gonna pick 5? Do you think that we should pick 5?
Since Rich has got the list, or I could get you another copy of it or whatever, and I guarantee there's stuff that you know about, or that Jeff knows about, or Rich knows about, that aren't on that list. This list is from probably 2 years ago that, I just started noting things because the agenda at that time was actually kind of light.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, if we need stuff in the future, then, these things are, obviously, they're dilapidated, they're,
I'm fine starting with that list. If it's 2 years old, I can't imagine anything is better.
some things actually have got knocked off.
But, and that's the thing, so would you wanna go and revisit your list before shooting it back to everyone?
Yeah,
If there are some that are, good,
sure.
just cross it off, and then that way you're not sending us stuff and we're just,
Right.
kind of put your eyes on it and,
Right.
I know our agenda is big, but a lot of the stuff is the same stuff. A lot of those things are for sale. I just feel like we're gonna be in a position where we are gonna have a little bit of time coming up.
it's planning ahead, definitely, for having, how it used to be, what I've been told in the past, was like, they tried to keep around 3 active,
Yeah,
on there.
React to 3 updates, I think.
Yeah, Rich, there was a time, not too long ago, that these meetings were half an hour.
Yeah, they started at 6:30 and ended
Yeah.
at 7.
Maybe. They might have gotten done before 7.
Yeah. But I
Then we
think,
went to 6. Now we're at 5:30.
But honestly, I feel like we have enough issues in this town that it should continue to be 5:30 for a while. I'd love to get to the point where we're not even necessary, but that's gonna take a long time.
Yeah, that'd be a wonderful, ultimate goal, is to not have to meet and police people's
Yeah.
ethics.
True.
There was actually a time not too long ago when they talked about not even meeting monthly.
Oh, quarterly or something.
Yeah, there was talk of every other month or
See,
quarter.
now that would be ideal, that would be a good goal to try to achieve.
That was just being lazy. Who had that idea? It's
Well,
a horrible idea.
I thought you were on the board then.
No, absolutely. It would be like, let's try and run this town for a day.
But I'm
We need
saying-
to meet quarterly.
But when things start coming into compliance with stuff, it would be a nice goal to achieve, that
Oh, for
things
sure.
are being taken care of.
And I think we're gonna get there. It's gonna take some time. But I think this is a good plan. Ryan can write up these letters, the warning letters, and then, Tony, you can maybe revisit that list and at least
Yep.
get us started there.
Yeah, I can run through it and give it to you guys, and you guys can decide what you wanna do with it, because, again, I don't want that direction.
And again, the direction would come from us to him when letters would be issued to people,
Yeah.
instead of it, you know, 'cause I know I'll hear about it, you know.
And we need a
And you
running
will.
list too, for the people that call me or email me or send me these addresses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need, and Tony has, whoever has access to it, where we can just plug an address in and say, received citizen call, where it stays on our radar.
One thing that I think some caution needs to be taken when it comes to these letters and stuff is the board's direction to Tony, right? The only way you guys theoretically have jurisdiction over a house is if it meets the criteria of actually being declared unsafe under the statute. So if we're in kind of this area where, you need to replace 5 pieces of siding,
Well, I
that's
think
probably
siding-
not the unsafe.
Right, I think
Right.
siding was more on the lighter side of
Sure.
of a violation.
Things like that, I think Tony can unilaterally or through the building department, be like, okay, this is a violation of the nuisance ordinance. But that's not the type of thing that needs to be brought to you guys, because you guys probably can't make a decision on that.
Mm-hmm.
But they will get those calls,
Sure.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
Just because it's gonna be someone's neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
hey, my neighbor's house is blah, blah, blah,
And if you're called out there and you're in the neighborhood and you're looking around like, oh yeah, they are missing a few pieces of siding or whatever, that's not something that needs to be brought back to them, because they probably don't have any jurisdictional authority to make a direction on that. It has to be something that, even as squishy as the unsafe ordinance can be in terms of, it's a nuisance, it has to be significant enough that, we would be talking about major repairs or demolition.
I got you.
Okay. Now, as far as our current agenda goes, I was thinking, I'd like to see, so we don't have an issue where something slips through the cracks, was given a 60-day, permit, and then that time expired, and they should have been on our agenda but weren't.
Right.
And I think that, I explained to Cheryl, hey, could we have it to where we have, it's, even if it's a 60-day, permit, that is still on the agenda as, so it's not out of sight, out of mind. And it's like, oh, this one was issued a 60-day demo permit, and so we can see it, not to create more work, but just so we have a paper trail in front of us during the meetings, so we know.
Something that used to be done on that, Rich, was if, John Doe is issued a 60-day demo permit in the July meeting, the August meeting, that item would still be just on sort of an update item, and it would just say, 60-day permit issued, whatever.
That's what I want to see.
7/21.
And
So it
Michelle,
has to stay active, where you guys have to, then take any sort of roll call on it. It's just,
Yeah.
hey, they're in the middle of it, if Tony knows what's going on, great, or Tony could come in the August meeting and be like, yeah, they never came in and applied for it.
yeah,
And then-
Michelle explained a little bit of that, one of the building department meetings about that.
Yeah, that might have been something we did with Michelle.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know,
And I wanna see that, just so it doesn't slip through the cracks and we have an issue like that. And then and like you said, definitely on update, so there's no action necessary for items like that.
Yeah, that'd
And
be
the
great.
same for deferrals. I've seen,
Same
in
thing.
the past, it would just say, 90-day deferrals issued July 21.
When I,
So we remember.
yeah, when I first started.
Barquist, I think, was here last month, and I don't recall if we deferred them for an extended period of time, but it would
Yeah.
just show up as, deferred until whatever.
Just a paper trail, because, I remember the first time I started looking at agendas going, well, wait, now why are they off? Well, it's because they had a 60-day deferral or something like that, and so of course it wasn't on the agenda, and I'm like, man, that gets confusing,
Yeah,
Because then you have to keep going back to looking at the old agendas and whatever,
And so
noted.
this would be easier for you or whoever was doing an agenda.
Yeah.
is Just look at the last one, notes,
Yeah.
I would think so, right? Then you could just copy paste it, drag it from Unsafe back up top or otherwise. As opposed to cycling back through, it's a 90-day deferral, so I gotta go back to the May meeting and figure it out. Are they August, are they September, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing.
I mean, it may add more, another page or so or whatever to an actual paper agenda or whatever, but I think it's necessary just for clarity and understanding what we actually have going on and what's,
yeah, I agree. Speaking of our friend, Mr. Fritz, any word from him?
No,
As far as unsafe?
Yeah.
well, he didn't fix permit.
Okay. No, but we've been talking with him about a drainage easement, but I know that's kind of completely unrelated to you guys, but,
It is, but it isn't, because he made it a deal.
well, okay.
What about, Barcelona? Did that sell, do you know?
I do not know if it's sold, but I did see it was listed.
Oh.
So just so you know, because when I spoke with him, with Greg, I was under the understanding that he was selling it to somebody, and it was just gonna,
That's what he said.
it was like wasn't being listed, he's selling it. And then next thing you know, I seen, because I get updates on when new stuff comes on Zillow and stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, that looks familiar, and it was on there. So, I don't, and I did not reach out to him to see, did that fall through, and now he's listing it, but that would be my assumption on what happened.
So are we gonna continue to do what we've done before with these houses that are up for sale now? Where we issue the order?
Yes, and, I did receive a, email again, from the one over here, Ms. Herrera again, 'cause she did get the letter. She did have the demo permit, I believe, but never came to pick it up.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And so, she got the notice saying that it had to be completed by the 20th, our meeting's on the 21st, and she was like, you guys are gonna tear the house down, so I ended up, instead of writing a book, I called her and I explained to her, I'm like, this is just something that comes out because you had the permit. She goes, well, I didn't pick it up. I said, I know, but the permit was issued, this is a standard thing that you're gonna get a notice that this is what's happening, but we all know her scenario and stuff. I told her right now, we want to be kept in the loop of what's happening. Does she have anybody interested in it and stuff? It still is gonna be on Unsafe. She was cleaning it up and stuff like that. But nevertheless, her situation's kind of, different with the,
Yeah.
unfriendly neighbors.
And the sad thing is I think you guys need more people like Ms. Herrera. Like, she's been responsive, I mean, that
Yes.
first meeting she came in here and she had plans to do things.
Yes.
And obviously there were outside forces at play that,
Yeah.
She cleaned up herself too. I mean, it's cleaned up outside.
you got more accomplished with her in 2 months
Yes.
than the prior 8 or 9 months that property was
And
on the agenda.
so I will have her last email just for, our written communication at the meeting on the 21st. I told her what we'd like to see is, whether it be on the 20th or just a few days, if she calls us on, or emails on Monday and says, hey, I had a couple of showings or whatever, or, we're closing on this day or whatever, just keep us informed instead of just us having to realize if she sold it or not. So I explained to her everything in the state statute, about her responsibility for notifying, you know, having, within the 5 days.
Did you
and
talk to
everything.
her about the fact that we're just, like, the goal, at least as you guys have stated, is to have the orders issued so we can record them, so they're just.
Yeah, so she understands, and I had the same conversation with, Mr. Cagnina and his realtor.
Yeah.
'Cause Michelle called me and asked me a question, and instead of trying to explain it to them over the phone, I just came down here with a copy of the ordinance and the state statute. This is the whole reason why. He highlighted it, circled it, you know, on what his requirements are if they were to sell it and stuff like that, so.
So back to Heather's question, this is kind of a policy question for you guys. You know, if Tony brings up one of the, you know, 16, 18, 28 properties, and the individual comes up here and says, I don't want to deal with it, I'm going to sell it, right? That's kind of, we've kind of reached that fork in the road where it appears maybe there's been a slight shift in approach, right? On the one hand, you know, in the past, sometimes it's just been, okay, sell it, tell the new owner, you know, and then we just cross our fingers and
Hope that they're gonna, yeah.
Yeah, but we've been, pardon my language, screwed with that approach.
Correct.
Which is why I'm opposed to doing that anymore.
And that's kind of the policy question then is, you know, if the initial meeting or any time during the period, somebody comes in and it's just like, well, I'm just gonna sell it. You know, at that juncture, at that statement, the question is how, you know, uniformly you guys wanna act on these moving forward. Is you're gonna say, okay, you are free to do that, then, you know, the statute requires you to make these changes. You haven't done these changes. We're gonna proceed with the demolition order just to protect ourselves. Or, you know, is it gonna be, all right, list it, you know, we'll give you a month, and then we'll deal with it.
Yeah, we don't wanna do that, 'cause then we understand that that's, from then on, now it turned, if we can act then, you know, it's still almost a 2-month process. By the time we do our first order, and then the second, you know, when we.
The downfall, of course, in pursuing the order is, we gotta get, you know, it's $300 to Fidelity National Title for every single one that we run title on. So there's those, you know, hard costs that the county incurs for those things, in which theoretically, somebody could sell it in that 60 or 90-day window, and you guys are out the money.
So at what point does then that become part of the fine, if we talk in fees, you know, fines?
Well, that, I mean, that sort of theoretically comes in if you're ever to demo the property, but that's really only the way to collect it.
Okay.
Only if it's demoed?
If we're gonna charge them for our costs of demolition, yes.
What type of, it's not protection, but what do we have as far as if we were to issue, like with these letters, and you do a $50 and then they don't comply and stuff like that?
Maybe you set your fine amount at $300 then, and that's your methodology of ensuring that there's.
That we're at least gonna get covered for.
Well, you're at least be covered for title policies that you've had to run on other ones, right?
So Ryan, you said prior that you can't place a lien on something that's usually for financial. So what if you did place a fine, and they didn't pay it, and then you do lien it?
So, and that was my question on enforcement. So, just take a standard town code violation, abandoned vehicle. I get a million of them in town court. You know, the citation gets issued, the person has 2 choices. They can say, I'm gonna pay like $25 to the Ordinance Violations Bureau, or I'm gonna ignore it. If they ignore it, the case gets filed in court. They, you know, ultimately are found liable for whatever reason. They fail to appear, or the judge doesn't like their evidence, whatever. Then the court enters judgment against them. Then it's a lien, it's a judgment lien. So it would be the $50 plus court cost of $139. The point on a greater first fine is, number one, some people might look at it as $50, whatever. The second point is, if you upped it to $300, you could potentially recover some of those costs
I like
for the title policies that you're issuing on these properties that we ultimately don't recover.
I like that. Let me ask you another question along with that. How can you place a lien, a judgment for unpaid sewer bills, but we can't do.
Sewer liens are different. Sewer liens are by statute. The Indiana legislature
Okay.
has declared that unpaid sewer bills can be liened. Those liens are added into the next year's tax bill.
Okay.
Their tax bill goes up by whatever, $100 or
Okay.
whatever. But you need some sort of statutory authority. Absent that, judgments in the state of Indiana are all liens against property owned in that particular county for a period of 10 years.
I like the $300 fine then.
I do too. Does that make more sense to you too, Tony, on, instead
I
of
think
just
you're
a
gonna try
50?
to cover yourself.
I mean, that's what the second letter, you're still gonna
Yeah.
need
Yeah, so they would
$50.
still, they'd have to ignore it for basically a month.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't wanna give it right off the bat.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if they ignore it, then it is what it is, and then you can, you know, place your lien, I guess.
Along with this ordinance, we are supposed to have our own bank account at this point, right?
We do have that fund.
Okay, so what do we have to do to make sure the $300?
And then I talked to Dave about that last week, so what we need is just a minor modification to the nuisance ordinance that's gonna change where that money goes.
Okay, so these $300 fines would go into our
The
bank
unsafe
account,
building fund,
where when we have to run title, it would come out of that account then?
correct. The same place that the cost that we recover for demoing houses would go. I know, Hefner was one that got paid last year, that money would have dropped in there. We're working on a final resolution to the Bird property, that money will go into that account.
And then 3 more invoices were sent out.
That are pending.
So, Lomberger, Ford, and 139.
Land bank or.
Yeah, Land Bank, all 3 of those were
Was
sent out.
anybody here for the IMACQ? When they first, Tony, were you even here for that?
Yeah.
Before it became land bank, these guys ride in on their white stallions from Vegas, they're investment guys, and they buy this property, and they're just schmoozing everybody over with these grandiose ideas. And after like 8 months, just like, nah, we're done. And they did nothing.
Yep, that's pretty much all it went.
And then, just so everyone knows, the Fernwood one, NIPSCO had gas and electric disconnected.
Are those the 2 Mogan properties?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so, was it Thursday or Friday? Whenever we had the budget meeting, Stans went and took the abandoned van that was there. They came and picked that up, and Tim was having Wendy schedule the dumpsters, so the Fernwood house is being either sometime this week or next week, weather depending.
Oh, good.
That one will be down.
That was the one that he couldn't get disconnected?
That one is the one on Windsor, or
Yeah.
whatever the other street is. That is the one that the gas is disconnected, but the electric is underground. It was disconnected at the house, but not at the pole.
Okay,
And, yeah, so there was kind of a issue with NIPSCO, saying that they didn't have an order for removing, but there was, because Tim had it at the same time, from what I understand, so he's proceeding with the Fernwood house, either this week or next, but
perfect.
the van's gone. Boone messaged me, said it's gone, I said thank you, and I already handed Jennifer the sheet that Stan's provided for me on what their fees are for picking up either a boat or this or that and stuff.
There's a boat there too.
And, yeah, the boat's different, it's aluminum, Tim can crush that.
Okay.
The van, little different story.
Yeah.
So Stan's hauled that away, and then I gave Jennifer the unsafe report for Fernwood with the Stan's thing, and said, here, you're gonna be seeing a bill from Stan's, and then I let Boone know to reference the 6599 Fernwood on the PO for the, so it's a, you know.
And, yeah, that would just be lined out then on the demo cost.
Yes, yeah. So anyway, that one's, the process started with that.
Great, thank you. We do.
All right, do we have anything else with this any other ideas, or?
Don't think so.
Yeah, I like the $300.
Yeah, I do too.
If you're gonna work on the letters, and Tony, maybe you can take a peek at that list,
Yep,
and then send us an updated kinda,
yeah.
what's the best way to have like a working list, though, of the calls that we get, or the messages that we get? I mean, it's easy as a spreadsheet, it doesn't need to be anything crazy.
Is there like an editable I don't know, Heather, you're in the schools, you guys use Google
We use
Drive.
Google, so
Yeah.
like Google Forms or Google.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously familiar with that, I don't know if there's something that's secure through the town system
Well,
that.
what would you think would be the easy way, Cliff, since you're...
We currently have the database already for Unsafe. That's the report you get every Saturday morning, I think
Yeah.
at 8.
You guys get that
It's
too,
about-
right?
Yeah.
It's about how you get information into that. Whatever you think will make work, whether you want to use Google or,
I'd like it to be something simple where we can just pull it up and add an address. I mean, it doesn't need to be anything formal, just, you know, citizen call, this address, citizen call, just so we can keep track of those.
would just a simple web form be okay?
Yeah, and then where does that go to?
It'll probably end up going to the building department or Cheryl, or so they can get it in the database.
And then is there a way for them to print that
Yes.
monthly for us
Yep.
Would that be-
It'll actually be included in your weekly report automatically.
in the report? Is that good?
I think so.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll make it happen.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I did have a question about the fine structure. So if it's over $250, that does require a court appearance. That bypasses the Ordinance Violation Bureau, right?
The nuisance, I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
So I would say let's just make it whatever the max is. Is it 250 or is it 3, right?
Yeah, it may not apply to nuisance, but I know for traffic.
Okay, so yeah, definitely worth looking into.
Well, first offense was $50 or above. Second offense was then $100 or above.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third offense was
200 or above.
200 or above. So that's, I mean, I would think that would have some teeth into it from the way our ordinance runs. Now, I don't know how collection goes, you know, I'm sure that's a completely different, you know, kettle of fish, but,
So you're kinda saying that the $300 is already kinda there?
it's kind of already there, right?
And Cliff, are you talking about that just in terms of the Ordinance Violations Bureau?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anything else?
Good for me.
Public comment?
You mind? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Broaders, 14513 Morris. Couple of things I'd like to just offer up as suggestions. Before I do that, I'd like to say I am impressed and in awe of the direction this board has gone in the last 3 months, 4 months, the direction you guys are taking and some forward movement. And of course, I watching Heather for the last 3 years, working hard at trying to get that direction going. It is just very nice to see it going in that direction. So thank you for that. There was a couple of things that I wanted to comment on, basically suggestions. And basically suggestions on the objective of this board, the title itself, Unsafe Buildings, which in turn is directed to public safety. And when you title a board that way, you have to understand that the liability that comes with that is enormous. It's enormous to the people that live next door to these properties. It's enormous to the people that take responsibility for making decisions on these properties. And I certainly, watching you three today, and 4 and 5 and 6, the discussion today says you guys believe that too, that the most important thing here is to make sure our residents are safe. Well, we talked a little bit about properties adjacent to streets and how things could be falling off. Well, that's how I think. My mind thinks public safety all the time. And in the past, well, of course, we've seen buildings taken down that probably didn't pose as much public safety as they did visual nuisance, and for all reasons I've seen, I hope to God we move from that. I would like to see this board take on some direction in what I saw the Stormwater Board do, where they start rating properties and problems. And when you talk about when you're going to add unsafe properties off a page and a half, and you're only talking about 3, maybe 5, well, then it should be an easy process of elimination, meaning the worst first, right? Because of public safety being our objective, you'd want to make sure we're not taking down our neighbor's house because it doesn't look good when I'm having a backyard party, and I happen to know 3 or 4 board members, or Tony, or Jeff, or something like that. Well, that's sometimes the appearance you get, right? And to avoid that appearance, by putting ratings on properties that say, this is a number 1, this has to come down first, there's 3 number 1s on this list. Well, that's easy enough, let's add them 3 number 1s. There's a lot of ways to get through this, but the first and foremost is dialogue. Today's meeting is fabulous. I mean, the things that I heard, the things that I'm offering up, I hope to God that moving forward, we simplify a lot and get a lot more done in a lot less time. Being that the objective of the board is public safety, I just feel like I've seen some buildings get knocked down in a quick jiffy, and I wonder why. And it wasn't even touching buildings, 100 feet away from other buildings, backed up to farm fields. I've seen buildings taken down, property sold right away. So to eliminate that kind of scrutiny, I would hope that you 3, and of course with the rest of the administration, understands that it shouldn't be picked and chosen like, well, this one really looks bad for my backyard, or this person I know really well, or he lives next door to my dad, or whatever reason being, it should never be that. It should always be public safety. Now, me and Rich have discussed it at a couple of different discussions about public unsafe and unsightly, public unsightly. And those are 2 great distances. There's a big distance between those 2. And that's why I think that dialogue today was so important, because you guys really did stipulate that there is a difference between those 2. And if you have unsightly on a page and a half of unsafe, then you're really smoke screening the real problem, the unsafe buildings. And I really just want to make sure that everybody is in agreement that the most important thing is that we take down the unsafe ones first.
Yeah, the unsightly turns into unsafe quickly.
And it does.
So that's the purpose of our meeting, really.
And our attorney here brought up a great point. You guys really don't have the authority until it becomes unsafe. So, I mean, this dialogue today was fantastic. Of course, I've learned so much. I'm sure you guys knew a lot of it, and maybe even learned a few things, but by having this type of dialogue, this town can move forward by not only taking down unsafe buildings, but cleaning up unsightly buildings.
Yeah, that was our hope with it, because we didn't have a process. I don't want to wait until properties are so bad that they are unsafe. But we've not been doing anything to tell these people, hey, you know what? You've had a tarp on your roof for 3 years. First of all, we know what that means.
Yes.
It's nothing good is happening in there, and you also have no intention of doing anything with it. So here's a little friendly nudge to.
And sometimes it takes a friendly nudge first, and then a swift kick, and you know what to get them moving. Lastly, I'd like to just say thank you for the opportunity to engage today. Again, I think these dialogues at every level, whether it be unsafe or building department in all levels, to make sure that the clarity, the vision of what people are seeing from the outside is always completely transparent. And the fact that picking and choosing what buildings comes down is never a great term to use. It should be the worst first, and maybe, as I've talked about, maybe sometimes as you look at that list, if you could start creating a category what they fit in, and maybe saying these are takedown buildings, these are full gut buildings, these are remodeled buildings, these are handyman specials. You can kind of get an idea of where Tony comes in and is more effective. Do we need Tony's eyes on this building now because we got this and it's about to fall over? So as you start doing your dialogue, when you start having these sessions, you could start building those lists. You could start creating those templates of what direction to follow and how fast to get things done. Lastly, I'd like to just add, one of the last things covered was the $300 fine, which on the first one, it does seem excessive. But on the flip side to that, referring to Jeff's comment, if we go 50, 100, 200, and that adds up to 300, well, that took 90 days to get there. Again, a lot can happen in 90 days. Somebody could sell the building. We have to start all over with a new owner. There's a lot of things I think you guys could put in writing now as you're having these meetings to eliminate that drag, that anchor in the sand, things that are slowing down the progress of your board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Terry. Do we have anybody online?
No.
All right, we will call this meeting adjourned at 9:06 a.m. Thank you.